Right now, a lion is lying 40 feet from a sleeping sand bushman camp in the Kalahari. The fire went out 2 hours ago. The children are still asleep, and nobody in that camp is panicking. Not because they don't know the lion is there. They do, they can smell it. They're just not afraid in the way you would be. We tell ourselves that ancient life was a nightmare of constant fear, that our ancestors spent every waking hour scanning the tree line, hearts hammering, one sound away from death, that they lived in a permanent state of what we now call hypervigilance, the same neurological state that defines anxiety disorders in modern humans. We are wrong about this, completely measurably wrong, and understanding why changes something fundamental about how you think about your own nervous system. Because the chronic, background dread that defines modern life, the low hum of threat that never quite turns off, that is not ancient, that is new, that is something we built. The question isn't how ancient humans lived with fear. The question is how they lived without the kind of fear that's eating us alive right now. Start with what the threat actually was. Predators were real. Lions, leopards, hyenas, cave bears, dire wolves. The fossil record is unambiguous. Predator pressure on early hominins was significant enough to shape our anatomy, our social behavior, our sleep patterns, our vision. The whites of human eyes, unique among primates, exist partly so that other humans can track your gaze, coordinate silently, watch the same threat at the same time. We were prey. For a long time, we were prey. But here's the thing about being prey. The animals that survive predator pressure are not the ones that are most afraid. They are the ones that are most accurate. A zebra on the Serengeti is not in a constant state of terror. When there are no predators nearby, it grazes calmly, completely. It eats with its head down. When a predator appears, its nervous system fires instantly, completely. Full cortisol response, full adrenaline, full sprint. And when the predator is gone, the zebra returns to grazing within minutes. Heart rate back to baseline, stress hormones cleared from the blood. Threat response on, threat response off. Ancient humans worked the same way. They had to, because running a full threat response state continuously is metabolically catastrophic. You cannot sustain it. The body will not allow it. Cortisol at chronic high levels degrades memory, destroys immune function, accelerates aging, and eventually kills you, more slowly than a lion, but just as certainly. Chronic fear is not a survival adaptation, it is a malfunction. So how did they manage it? How did you live in a landscape full of things that could kill you, and still sleep, still laugh, still raise children without burning out your own nervous system? The answer has 3 layers, and the first one is in the landscape itself. Anthropologist Louis Liebenberg spent years studying the sand bushmen of southern Africa, one of the oldest continuous human cultures on Earth, a people whose way of life traces back at least 70,000 years. He wasn't there to study fear, he was there to study tracking. What he found changed his understanding of human cognition. The sand hunters read landscape the way we read text. Not just tracks, everything. The angle of broken grass, the way dust had settled on a footprint, the behavior of birds 300 meters away, reacting to something the hunters couldn't yet see. They moved through terrain that looked empty to Liebenberg and was to them a continuous legible narrative of what had happened and what was happening. They were not watching for danger. They were reading the world. This is a distinction that sounds subtle but is neurologically enormous. Watching for danger is open-ended. There is no moment when you can stop because the threat could come from anywhere, at any time, in any form. It is bottomless. It is exhausting. It is, neurologically, exactly the state most modern humans are in most of the time, surrounded by a world they can't read, scanning for threats they can't predict. Reading the world is different. It has resolution. A skilled tracker doesn't need to fear what's in the bush because he knows what's in the bush. He read it 20 minutes ago in a depression in the sand and the way a hornbill took flight to the north. He is not anxious, he is informed. The first answer to how ancient humans lived without constant fear is this. They were not ignorant of their environment. They were fluent in it. But this is only the beginning of the answer. In 1966, anthropologist Sherwood Washburn made an observation that nobody had thought to make before. He pointed out that predators kill humans at night at dramatically higher rates than during the day. And yet, across every ancient culture ever studied, humans slept deeply, regularly, in predictable locations. They slept in groups, that's the key. Group sleeping isn't just warmth or companionship, it is an alarm system of extraordinary sophistication. In a group of 8 sleeping humans, the variation in sleep depth at any given moment means that at least 1 or 2 people are in lighter sleep stages, more responsive to sound. Unconscious sentinel behavior, not deliberate, just the natural staggering of sleep cycles, producing a community-level vigilance that no individual could sustain alone. Studies of the Hadza in Tanzania, published by Jerome Siegel at UCLA in 2015, found that in a typical night, there was almost no moment when the entire group was in deep sleep simultaneously. Someone was always close to waking. The group as a unit never fully went offline. Sherwood Washburn called it the social solution to an individual vulnerability. A solitary human sleeping in predator territory is in genuine danger. A group of 8 humans sleeping together with fire-building knowledge and collective alertness is close to untouchable. Large predators avoid that calculus. It's not worth the risk. Ancient humans weren't brave about sleeping in dangerous landscapes. They were strategic, and that strategy extended far beyond sleep. Here is the pattern interrupt. The fact that reframes everything you think you know about prehistoric fear. Archaeologist Ian Tattersall at the American Museum of Natural History spent decades analyzing the archaeological record of early Homo sapiens sites across Africa and Europe, and he kept noticing the same thing. These sites were not hidden. We assume ancient humans lived in concealment, tucked into caves, buried in dense forest, minimizing their visibility to avoid attracting attention. But the earliest long-term habitation sites are almost universally positioned on elevated ground with wide sightlines, open hilltops, high ridges above river valleys, places where you could see for miles. Not hiding, watching. Early humans didn't manage predator fear by making themselves invisible. They managed it by making themselves informed. They chose positions that gave them maximum information about the landscape around them. Because knowing what's coming, even if what's coming is a predator, is less stressful than not knowing. This is backed by modern psychology. Studies on anxiety consistently show that uncertainty is more distressing than bad news. People given a definite bad outcome experience lower sustained stress than people left in ambiguity. The human nervous system would rather know it faces a threat than not know whether a threat exists. Ancient humans intuitively built their whole survival strategy around that truth. The elevated position, the group sleeping arrangement, the tracking fluency, the reading of bird behavior and wind direction, all of it was reducing uncertainty. All of it was converting an unreadable, threatening world into a legible, manageable one. The real reason they didn't live in chronic fear has nothing to do with being tougher than us. It has to do with being more present. There is one story that crystallizes this more than any study. In the 1970s, anthropologist Elizabeth Marshall Thomas lived intermittently with the Juhansi people of the Kalahari. One evening, a lion killed a gemsbok near the camp. The Juhansi heard it happen, the distant impact, the sounds of a struggle, the silence afterward. The next morning, the men of the camp walked to where it happened. They found the lion still with its kill. And they walked up to it, not to drive it away with fire and noise, not from a safe distance with spears raised. They walked up to a feeding lion, spoke to it, calmly, directly, in the way you might address a neighbor who had parked in your spot, and then they took a portion of the meat. The lion moved off. Thomas wrote about it with the same quiet disbelief that Darwin had for the Yahan. She expected fear. She saw negotiation. What she was witnessing was the product of generations of accumulated knowledge about lion behavior, how they respond to confident approach versus flight, how a feeding animal calculates risk differently than a hunting one, how direct eye contact and vocal assertion rid to a lion as a signal of danger rather than prey. They weren't fearless, they were skilled, and skill does something to fear that courage alone cannot. Courage pushes through fear, skill dissolves it, because once you understand something deeply enough, it stops being a mystery, and mysteries are where fear lives. The philosophical gut punch is this: modern humans are the most protected species in the history of the planet. We have eliminated almost every predator from the environments where we live. We have built walls, alarms, locks, police forces, insurance systems, and legal structures to manage threat. We have more safety than any human in history has ever had, and we are more anxious than any humans in history have ever been. The anxiety research is unambiguous. Rates of clinical anxiety disorder have risen steadily for decades across every demographic in the developed world. We are not a traumatized species living under siege. We are the safest humans who ever lived, and we cannot sleep, cannot stop scanning, cannot quiet the background hum of unspecified threat. The ancient nervous system evolved for a world it could read. It needed to read that world to function. The fluency itself, tracking, observing, attending to the actual details of an actual landscape, was what kept the threat response calibrated, on when necessary, off when not. We have taken away the predators and kept the vigilance. We have removed the lions and replaced them with screens that deliver an unending, unresolvable stream of threat signals from everywhere on Earth simultaneously. The news, the feed, the notification, things you cannot track. Things you cannot read, things you cannot walk up to and speak to calmly. Ancient humans were afraid of things they could see. We are afraid of everything we can't. There is a sand bushman concept that anthropologists have struggled to translate cleanly into English. The closest rendering is something like watchful rest. It describes a state of being relaxed and alert at the same time, not the tense vigilance of anxiety, but the settled, open attention of someone who trusts their ability to read what's around them. Every culture that has lived close to predators seems to have a version of this. The Hadza have it, the Inuit have it, the Aboriginal Australians have it. It is not meditation exactly. It is more like a relationship with the environment, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing where you are and what surrounds you. That capacity is still in you. It has not been designed out of the human nervous system. It has been suspended, crowded out by a world that delivers more unresolvable signals per day than a prehistoric human encountered in a year. The ancient answer to fear was not toughness, or weapons, or hiding. It was attention, deep, skilled, practiced attention to the actual world immediately around them. They looked at the same darkness we look at. They just knew how to read it.